and this is where we get to the final thing. Therefore, the universe has a cause of its existence. The issue is, if we say, well, okay, Ben, you're a brain in a vat, and your existence was caused, but that was caused by something else that exists, and that was caused by something else that exists, and that was caused by something else that exists. But if eventually you get back to something that's the first cause, because otherwise you've got this infinitely long past, and you've got this problem. So you've got to get back to the first cause. So therefore, the universe, or whatever started off this sequence of events, has a cause of its existence. And Al-Ghazali made an argument that, like, whatever that was a personal creator of the universe, a personal being, God. And you might ask, like, well, that seems like a leap. It's not really a leap, because it's either a thing or it's not a thing. It's either a person or a thing, or it's a personal being or it's not a personal being. Okay? But the thing is, it has to exist timelessly. Otherwise, the same Hilbert Hotel problems and Bertrand Tristan Shandy problems apply to it. So you have to get back to something that exists timelessly. And even the Christian theologians who think that the universe, that God, stepped into time when He created the universe, still believe that God existed outside of time. Or, there's a bunch of ways to put it, because when you say outside of time, that confuses people. But just that God transcended time might be a better way to put it, or timelessly might be a better way to put it, and that God created time and stepped into time with the creation of the universe. Either way, the cause of the universe was originally something that was not inside of time, because then you would have these same mathematical problems. And so the only way around it, because of the first premise and the second premise both being really, really good, essentially we've got metaphysical impossibilities here, you're not going to get any stronger, then the universe has a cause of existence. That thing is timeless. Here's the issue. If it's not a personal being, it's just a thing. It's like water. Water is just, water doesn't make choices. It just exists and has certain properties. When you heat it up, it becomes a gas, and it will have a certain pressure based on how much of it there is, how big the container is, and how hot you got it. Okay? When it's poured into a container, it will take the shape of the container because it doesn't respond to shear stress. Although it will just, it's a fluid like that. It'll just reshape itself. When it's on a slope, it will always run down the slope or towards the direction that gravity pulls it. Okay? Whereas a brick might have enough friction to not run down the slope. Water works differently. It has properties. And anything that it does, like running down the slope, for example, or taking the shape of the container or becoming a gas, those are all dictated by the properties that it has. You could put the same amount of heat on a rock and it would not become a gas because the rock has different properties. A rock is a thing. Water is a thing. They have properties. And what they do and how they respond and the things that they cause to happen are going to be dependent on their properties. So a rock, Aristotle put it like this. His definition of nothing was, nothing is what rocks dream about. Rocks don't choose to do things, they just are things. Like a rock falls on your foot, it didn't fall on your foot because it wanted to fall on your foot. It just had properties that gave a certain weight and nothing was holding it up, and it just fell on your foot. Okay? You can put a rock in a pot and heat it up and it won't boil, but you put water in a pot and you'll have steamy room. The water is the reason why that happened, because it has certain properties. So the point is, if the timeless cause of the universe is a thing, then its causing of the universe to come into existence would be timelessly a result of its timeless properties. And so the universe would be timelessly beginning to exist and never getting any older. It would just be doing what it does based on its timeless properties. So this is Al-Ghazali's argument, and he says the only way, there's other arguments Craig makes for this. I think other arguments that Ghazali made for this. This is the only one that I'll use because I think it's strong enough as it is. But Ghazali's argument was just that since this cause must exist, and since the universe does exist inside of time, and since it can't be a thing, then it has to be the other thing. Because that's all we're left with, and it has to be one or the other. And when you bring a personal being into the question, into the mix, then you get other, like, personal beings can do things. Like, our thoughts are essentially like mental events that we bring into existence all the time, or that a personal being brings into existence all the time. I mean, maybe we're robots. Ben, you haven't proved that we're not robots. No, but like, just pretend that I did for the sake of understanding this illustration. There are events that a thought is like an event that comes into existence inside your mind without a cause. In a way, but not really, because you exist as some sort of spiritual entity that is a controlling factor, and that's what's called agent causation. It's a different form of causation, but when you have a personal being, you can have this distinction in what the cause is like and the effect is like. There can be this sort of breakdown, and you can't get that with things. So that's the argument as it is. Let's see how long we went for this video. An hour. So yeah, that's Al-Ghazali's final unpacking of the argument. William Lane Craig makes a further argument that the only timeless entities that really can exist are what's called abstract objects in philosophy, and then or personal beings or minds. And abstract objects just can't sit in causal relationships. So like an abstract object it includes like a bunch of things, like an infinite number of things, and I mean it's a big debate whether or not they even exist, or they, just like something we think about, like numbers. Do numbers exist really? The thing is, like, numbers don't. I think it's obvious that numbers don't really cause things to happen. They don't create things or cause things to pop into existence. Like the number 2 doesn't do that. So again, we just have this strong problem with a timeless thing causing the universe to begin to exist and doing something that's outside of its properties. And it would seem that a personal being can imagine and be things like more than what it is. Like, so the thing is, a personal being, what that means is, imagine yourself, and you have like 2 doors you can go through. And you could go through this door, you could go through door number 1 or door number 2. And which door are you going to go through? Well, it might be number 1, it might be number 2. I can't decide which door to go through. Let's say you go through door number 2. Okay? I wonder if y'all can hear the fireworks in the background. Neighbors shooting fireworks. Door number 1, door number 2. You go through number 2. Why did you go through number 2? Well, your feet walked over there and your hand opened. Why did that happen? You're going to follow a chain of causes back to something just like your spirit. Okay? just for the sake of illustration, we don't have to say that this really happens, but let's just say for the sake of illustration. Okay, when you made that choice to do that, was that choice something that relied on what when your spirit made that choice? Was it defined by what your spiritual self is? If it was defined by that, then you didn't have a choice, because you are what you are, and you would do what you do. So like, the only way you can have a choice to go through number 1 or number 2 is if what you choose is not based on what you are. And so the essence of personhood is the ability to cause things to happen that aren't grounded in what you are. That's an essential component of what it means to be a personal being. So it's like, by definition, the cause of the universe would have to be a personal being. So it's not just that it's not a thing because there's problems with it being a thing, but it's rather that what this cause of the universe is doing by existing outside of time but bringing something that exists in time into existence is something that can only ever be the actions of a personal being. So, there we go. I guess we'll stop there. I know that was a long video, but I just, as I go through these studies, I think I could do a better job than I have done in the past, and make a stronger case than I have done in the past. So I'm just going to lay that out there, and hopefully, I think we did well this time, and I don't need to come back in and say, oh, I forgot to say this, I should add this. I think we're going to stop like an hour 10. So for everyone who hung around and listened to philosophy, I hope you enjoyed it. The implications of this argument are immense. They're tremendous and immense. They're tremendous. It's a big deal because it means that there exists a God who created the universe, which means that a lot of miracles happened, because everything that you experience because God brought it into being without a prior. Like, all of the space, matter, time, and energy in the universe was brought into existence miraculously, and it has to be the case. It must be. Okay, so we all experience miracles all the time, and that raises a question of well, why doesn't God do more miracles? And I guess I did allude to it earlier, but there's a theological problem with just everything, God performing miracles all the time, because we wouldn't know how to live in this world if it didn't have regular laws to how it works. So the odd miracle here or there is fine, but again, if you went to McDonald's and the McDonald's turned into Tyrannosaurus Rex because the God miraculously changed the laws of the universe, and sometimes when you laid on your bed it was soft, and sometimes it was as sharp as nails, because God just changed. If God just constantly performed miracles all the time like that, it would be it would be impossible for us to live. This would be an existential problem. How do I exist? What do? I don't even know how to make choices in this environment, because I don't know what the situation is going to be 5 seconds from now. I can't exist in this. I can't choose. I can't make choices. So the issue there is, if God, created us, then the logical thing to think is God wanted us to exist in this universe, and therefore God wouldn't make it impossible for us to exist in this universe. And there's other arguments that you can make to defend the goodness of God and God's attributes, numerous classical attributes of God's existence. And so what you run into is a theological problem with miracles happening all the time, and it makes more theological sense for the world to function according to uniform laws of nature. And this is actually the basis for why people started looking for laws of science in the first place. So, because it's a Christian thing, they thought they were they really thought they were. It was like, if we could find them, the real laws of the universe, like we could. It's like looking into the mind of God. You know, God's like a model for how I'm going to make a universe, and it's going to have these laws. We could know those laws. It'd be so cool, you know, if we knew what they were. That was the idea. It was like a worship thing. But so that being said, you know, that we were talking about scientism a while ago, and that is another assumption of science that can be, you know, we've just proved it. Well, we piggybacked off other arguments for God's existence, but they're good too. And so anyway, that's it. I guess I should stop there. Everyone who hung around, thank you so much for your time. And Ben says good night.